Over 60? Discover 4 shocking carbs to avoid and 4 delicious ones to transform your health forever. Helen sat beside her blossoming garden in the sleepy town of Maplewood, the sunlight dappling through the leaves, yet a heavy cloud hung over her heart. Just shy of her 65th birthday, she couldn't shake the worries bloom beneath her vibrant surface. Her friends, once full of life and laughter, were now grappling with health crises that surged out of nowhere, battling things like diabetes and heart disease. Comfort foods that had long defined their gatherings now seemed like ticking time bombs. How could something that brought so much joy turn into this kind of sorrow? Her thoughts turned to her grandchildren. Each one looked at her with wide eyes, hoping for stories and sweet treats alike. The urgency in their gazes fueled her resolve. She thought of one friend, Marie, who had always loved baked ziti more than anything. If only she'd steered clear of those carbs, Helen thought, her stomach tightening at the very notion of losing someone she loved so dearly. With a deep breath, she knew she had to seize this moment not just for her own well-being, but for the family that relied on her. Back in her cozy kitchen, the familiar aroma of her signature apple pie enveloped her. It was comfort incarnate, yet curiosity piqued as she stumbled upon an online article. 4 shocking carbs to avoid and 4 delicious ones to transform your health forever. The headline blared. Doubt coursed through her. Could it be true? Deconstructing her cherished recipes felt unthinkable. How could she return to laughter-filled moments with her late mother, baking with joy, while also potentially sacrificing her health? But the deeper she delved into the article, the more she uncovered hidden dangers lurking within her beloved dishes. Memories of relishing homemade biscuits and mouth-watering casseroles faded under an uncomfortable truth. Those delightful carbs she'd always embraced became symbols of an impending health crisis she never wanted to face. At the same time, Helen felt determined. She could do this for her grandchildren. They deserved a grandmother who would be around to make memories, not a statistic. The tension grew, especially with Laura, her daughter who juggled work and parenting like a hero. What had once been light-hearted banter now turned into arguments over dinner choices. Why change what has always been good enough? Laura would question, her brow furrowing in confusion and concern. It pained Helen to see her daughter's struggle to understand this radical shift, fueled by love but absent of common ground. On the eve of Thanksgiving, the gravity of her commitment crashed down. Surrounded by the clatter of the kitchen, she felt the weight of generations. Her heart raced as she debated audaciously changing the high-carb staples to healthier alternatives. Would this be viewed as sabotage or inspiration? With mounting anxiety, she looked over the recipes, each one a delicate thread in their family tapestry. Then came the moment will they embrace the new or resist her efforts? As she unveiled her reinvented stuffing, hesitation rippled through the air. The kitchen filled with the scent of roasted turkey, laughter transitioning to breathless anticipation. Laura hesitated, her eyes darting from the food to Helen. This interlude crystallized the critical point, facing a potential shift that could either nurture or fracture family bonds. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each dish she presented now loomed larger than life. Each bite a question posed to. The family gathered closely yet emotionally distant. The weight of legacy rested in her hands, and tension gripped her heart as they hesitated, uncertainty hanging like a veil. Would they resist? Would laughter break her resolve, or spark a new tradition? A calm facade cloaked her resolve, yet within, her spirit waged war against doubt as the dining room swelled in silence, waiting for a decision sure to shift their family's future. A beat seemed to stretch forever in that dining room, where the scent of roasted turkey and her carefully crafted stuffing mingled with tension. Helen's heart hammered as she scanned the faces of her family, searching for signs of acceptance or resistance. Laura's expression was a delicate mask of concern mixed with curiosity. Her other children, Joshua and Aileen, shared similar looks, eyes darting between the food and their grandmother. "Mom," Laura finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "Why did you change everything?" The question, so laden with emotion, felt like a gauntlet thrown. Helen's stomach tightened as memories of past family feasts flashed in her mind, memories rich with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the warmth of love infused into every dish. "Because I love you all," Helen said softly, her voice steady despite the quaking in her chest. "And I want to be here for you, healthy and happy for many more holidays to come." She felt a stirring within her, a new resolve rearing its head. She was no longer just a traditionalist. She was a pioneer in her family's culinary landscape. Silence loomed again, heavy and daunting. Each second felt like a test of faith. Would her family open their minds to this new way of cherishing food? Or would they cling to the past, inadvertently tethering them to unhealthy habits? Joshua, the middle child, broke the silence with a tentative smile. "All right, let us give it a try," he said, lifting a spoonful of the stuffing. To Helen's relief, the hint of amusement in his voice seemed to diffuse some of the tension. "Oh, what's the worst that could happen?" Aileen chimed in, a glint of mischief in her eye. "We could always give Grandma's apple pie a spin next." Her playful banter lit a spark, and the nervous atmosphere began to crack with the first hints of laughter. "Not this year," Helen interjected, feeling the edges of her smile tug upward. "I found a way to lighten that up too." The declaration rippled excitement through the table, and for the first time, anxiety loosened its grip on her heart. As they all took the first bites, Helen held her breath. Each small forkful echoed her internal battle. The stuffing, infused with spices she'd carefully chosen, danced on the tongues of her family members. She watched their faces intently, searching for the verdict bravery demanded. Then, like the unfurling petals of her garden blooming in the spring, smiles emerged. Joshua nodded approvingly, mouth full. Aileen raised an eyebrow, surprised but delighted, and even Laura, though still cautious, began to chew thoughtfully. "This isn't bad at all, Mom," Laura finally admitted. "It's different, but I think I can get on board with this." Each endorsement felt like a balm on Helen's fluttering heart. Just as she feared a chink in the family bond, she cultivated something new, an acknowledgement of change that still embraced love. The conversation shifted, laughter mingling with disbelief as they compared ingredients and flavors, reminiscing about old family traditions. At that moment, Helen realized this was more than changing recipes. It was a turning point in their family narrative. Yet, uncertainty lingered. But what will Thanksgiving next year look like? She pondered silently. Her mind raced, envisioning a future intermingled with healthful choices, but fractured if she failed to win over Laura completely. Amid the clinking of forks and whispers of plans for their next meal, Helen's resolve ignited further. She could become a beacon of change, but would her loved ones follow her lead? This was only the beginning. Her gut told her that there was still tension ahead, questions to be addressed, and paths to navigate. One made not just through diets, but through the deeper questions of support and family. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Would Helen be ready to face Laura? Would she discover the strength to confront the deeper fears tucked away beneath her efforts to nurture? The laughter and chatter of the dinner table faded into a blur as Helen's mind raced ahead, contemplating the nuances of change she had initiated. Her heart swelled with a mix of pride and apprehension. Suddenly, the realization struck her. This shift extended beyond food. It heralded her evolution as a parent and a partner. For so long, she had draped herself in the familiarity of tradition, believing that sticking to the past was synonymous with nurturing her family. Yet, as she observed her children embrace her new recipes with tentative smiles, she understood she was initiating a larger transformation. Helen's gaze fell on Laura. The younger woman's expression reflected her conflict, a swirl of skepticism and curiosity that tugged at Helen's insides. Could she bring Laura along on this journey toward healthier choices, without alienating her? The question lodged itself deeper in Helen's mind, and she felt it swirl like a storm cloud. Once the plates were cleared and the coffee brewed, the atmosphere shifted. Helen could sense that the moment had come. Tension was thick again, but this time it was intertwined with excitement. Would they delve deeper into the conversation, or would they circle back to safety? "Mom," Laura began, her tone turning earnest, "I know you're trying to help us, but you don't have to carry it all on your shoulders alone. Helen inhaled sharply, her thoughts fumbling like marbles escaping her grip. What do you mean? She didn't want to appear vulnerable, yet opening up felt inevitable. Laura placed her hands on the table, as if anchoring herself before launching into uncharted waters. You've always been the strong one, but we want to be here for you too. We can figure this out together. The words felt both liberating and daunting. As Laura spoke, Helen's mind darted back to the years of single-handedly planning every meal, every holiday, believing she bore the burden of maintaining their family's coherence. The fear of relinquishing control clawed at her, choking back the tears that threatened to spill. I understand, but it's just Helen started but stopped herself. The urge to defend her role bubbled inside her, yet she forced herself to breathe through it. I've always thought if I just made everything perfect, we'd all be happier. Aileen interjected softly. Mom, we don't need perfect. We need real. She smiled gently, a lighthouse in the emotional storm. Suddenly, a question broke through the veil of anxiety. What about your health? What can we do to support you? Joshua's earnestness shined through the air, transforming the heaviness with his sincerity. This moment felt pivotal. Helen hadn't thought about how to involve them actively in this process of rejuvenation. Instead, she had acted as if it were entirely her fight. Perhaps it was time to lower her defenses and embrace the very support she had long sheltered within. As conversation flowed between them, Helen felt a warmth unfold, a small awakening. Each child had their own approach to this shift, and they weren't merely passengers, they were willing partners. The bonds they were forging were based on more than tradition. They were laying down the bricks of a new freedom. Filling her lungs with resolve, Helen decided to navigate this uncharted territory. She knew the road would be bumpy, especially with Laura's lingering doubts, but if they could find a way to honor the old while embracing the new, maybe, and just maybe, they could create a legacy rooted in authenticity, not nostalgia. Okay, she said, her voice laced with determination and supported by the trust forming around the table. Let us figure this out together. But I'll need your help every step of the way. And as the laugh lines in their faces deepened, Helen felt a swell of possibility. She was no longer just the keeper of tradition. She was becoming a conduit for change, a journey she would share with her family. With resolve wrapping around her, she began to outline their next steps together, oblivious to the storm of uncertainties still brewing on the horizon. But her journey had only just begun, and with each decision, the future loomed over her like an unfinished canvas filled with unknown strokes waiting to be painted. What would the next confrontation reveal about their interconnected lives? Helen awoke the next morning with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. The sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the carefully organized ingredients laid out on the counter. Today, she decided, would mark the first step toward their new way of eating and living. The previous night's conversation echoed in her mind, pushing her forward, igniting her resolve. As she cracked the eggs and whisked them, a thought snagged at her mind. This wasn't just a culinary shift, it was a shift in dynamics. Each child now stood poised to engage in their family's evolution. Nonetheless, doubt seeped in. If she failed at this, wouldn't she merely return to the old routines, sustaining safety under the illusion of happiness? Before she could overthink, Helen made a concentrated effort to breathe deeply and focus on the task at hand. She jolted when a sudden clattering sound snapped her back to reality. Laura ambled sleepily into the kitchen, her hair tousled and eyes half closed. "Mornin', Mom," she mumbled, settling at the table. "What's on the menu?" With a simple smile, Helen replied, "Just experimenting with some veggie omelets and whole grain toast." Laura's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Veggies? Really?" "Yes, really," Helen chuckled, then turned serious. "I want us to give this a genuine shot. Step out of our comfort zone." As Helen prepared breakfast, Laura's skepticism lingered like an uninvited guest, but Helen found it easier to embrace her vulnerability now. She wasn't alone in this, and the thought of fortifying their bond through shared experience nudged her heart. Moments later, as the eggs sizzled in the pan and the aroma danced through the air, Aileen and Joshua shuffled in, drawn by the scents. Helen served breakfast, and as they all convened around the table, She couldn't help but notice the hesitant glances exchanged between them. "All right, let us vote," Helen proposed, trying to infuse the moment with lightness. "Who thinks healthy can actually taste good?" Aileen raised her hand first, her enthusiasm infectious. Joshua followed, chuckling. But Laura sat back, crossing her arms, clearly drowning in uneasy contemplation. "Come on, Laura. This isn't a punishment," Helen said softly, meeting her daughter's gaze. "Just give it a taste." With a deep breath, Laura finally reached for her fork, cutting into the omelet. As she took a bite, the tension was palpable. It felt like a tightrope walk. Helen's heart raced, thoughts spiraling. "Okay," Laura said slowly, her expression contemplative. "This isn't terrible. If it helps, it's a step," Aileen offered. Helen watched the playful jab, feeling a pinch of pride swelling in her chest. After the meal, she decided it was time to take the initiative further. "Why don't we plan our next week's meals together? What do you all want to try? I'd love your input." As suggestions flowed and voices filled the room, Helen felt something inside her shift. Each child shared ideas, some playful and others inspired. They sparked memories of family trips, laughter echoing in kitchens filled with love and hope. Even as they brainstormed, Helen noticed the undertow of Laura's hesitation, a persistent shadow lingering in her daughter's expressions. Would this transformation mean letting go of more than just old recipes? Would it challenge the very foundations of family traditions that bound them? By the time they settled on a menu, Helen felt an overwhelming assertion of camaraderie emerge among them. It invigorated her, stripping away the layers of past burdens. Maybe this journey was not merely about food. It was about evolving together, redefining connections through every recipe they explored. As she watched her children animatedly sharing ideas, an unsettling thought pierced through her joy. What might happen if they ventured too far from those traditions she had linked to love? Would they discover a newfound freedom, or would they resurrect a distant void? The question weighed heavily on her, and as they clean up, the thoughts churned within her. Perhaps the biggest challenge was about to unfold, not in the kitchen, but in the core of their familial tapestry. And as she stared down at the dishes, Helen realized that while they'd taken their first step, the path ahead would require embracing the unknown. The apprehension of uncharted territory loomed larger than she'd ever expected. What would be revealed in the unexplored corners of their family dynamics? Helen stood at the sink, bubbles forming around her hands as she scrubbed the last of the breakfast dishes. The warmth of the morning sun on her back was comforting, yet she felt the weight of a deeper unease settle in her chest. This new path was uncharted, and the lingering apprehension whispered to her that perhaps, despite the joy of sharing ideas and laughter, there were darker currents beneath. How far could she push before they ventured beyond the safety of their familiar bonds? As the dishes clinked together, her mind whirred with possibilities. Thoughts of planning the meals for the upcoming days ignited her creativity. What if she integrated not just new recipes, but also stories connected to each dish? They could inspire discussions about their heritage, values, and dreams. A search for identity within their shared experience seemed fitting, but would it resonate with her children? Deciding to seize the momentum from breakfast, she picked up her notebook and began jotting down ideas. Her handwriting was messy, but each word represented a flicker of hope. Quinoa salad with roasted veggies, a nod to their summer family trip to the mountains. Sweet potato tacos, a recipe she twisted from her mother's with personal flair. She had juice for life now, and it felt invigorating. Lost in thought, Helen barely noticed Laura sidling up to her, their shoulders almost touching. "What are you writing?" Startled, Helen looked at her daughter. The skepticism in Laura's expression had morphed into something softer, a hint of curiosity. "Just some ideas for meals next week," Helen replied, a spark of defiance rushing through her. "What do you think? Want to add something?" Laura studied the notebook, questions forming behind her stormy blue eyes. "Can we try pasta? Like Grandma used to make?" A wave of nostalgia washed over Helen. The thought of homemade marinara simmering on the stove, spices mingling, each of their favorite ingredients woven into her mother's legacy brought warmth. "Absolutely. We can put our spin on it," she replied, voice steady but her heart racing. "So we get to decide." A smile flickered on Laura's face, an expression Helen hadn't seen in a while. "Yes, It's an adventure, and I'm counting on you to keep it fun. As they crafted their meal plan together, Helen felt a shift within herself. Perhaps embracing vulnerability was less about the loss of safety and more about instilling trust and communication among them, a bridge that spanned generations, led by her willingness to step away from the rigidness of their traditions. However, creeping shadows remained. The idea of revisiting family recipes caused doubt to seep in. Would she simply reproduce old cycles instead of creating fresh ones? Each culinary remembrance held emotional weight. Could they wrestle with the ghosts of memories intertwined with pain? After finalizing the list, Helen realized she needed to confront this impending challenge head-on. A moment of silence enveloped them as they perused the ingredients spread out in her notebook, contemplating their next steps. What if, instead of recreating the past, they drew on it and built something anew? What if we turned some of Dad's favorites into healthy options? Helen suggested, testing Laura's reaction. He loved creamy Alfredo, not the same. Laura interjected softly, pushing her fork into the table. You can't just change it. Maybe not, Helen conceded. But what if we find a way to honor it without losing ourselves? In that moment, the undercurrents rose between them, a tension filled with unspoken words. Laura's skepticism flickered back, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Helen's heart raced as she grappled with the discomfort. The prospect of confronting these pain points was real. This would demand vulnerability from her all over again, not just with her approach to food, but in how they built connections through the messiness of unearthing long-held traditions. What if we faced this together, Laura? Like we did today? Laura's gaze dropped, an internal struggle playing out behind her closed lips. Would they sink into a deeper divide or find new ground to build upon? The quiet that followed was heavy with potential and uncertainty. In the kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of sunlight and love, fears mingled with hope. A transformative process now more than ever ensured that progress demanded mutual understanding. As Helen caught her breath, she realized the real challenge lay not just in innovating meals, but in forging resilience amid the discomfort. They would have to navigate through dark times as much as the light, which brought the prospect of deeper connection or the risk of devastating rifts. And as Laura grabbed the notebook, turning it toward herself, Helen understood that only time would reveal what this new culinary journey would unearth about their family as fabric and all they stood to lose or gain. Was it too late to honor the past while forging a bright future? Only a leap together could tell. Helen watched as Laura's fingers traced the edges of the notebook, a mixture of excitement and trepidation dancing in her chest. The culinary exploration had sparked more than just a renewed interest in making meals. It was unlocking a door she had kept tightly shut. They were stepping onto a landscape where legacy and innovation could coexist, even thrive. The question loomed. Would they emerge stronger, or would the unresolved feelings rooted in the past drown them? That evening, with the table set and the aroma of roasted vegetables wafting through the air, Helen felt the familiar tightness in her throat. The scent of the sweet potato tacos lingered, mingling with a heaviness of expectations and a smidgen of fear. Would her family embrace these new twists, or would they react with disdain, clinging stubbornly to memories of what once was? "Dinner's ready," she called, trying to steady the tremor in her voice. Laura appeared first, her face a mask of skepticism and curiosity intertwined. The atmosphere in the house felt charged with the potential for both memories and conflict. "What's that?" Laura pointed at the colorful spread. The look on her face made Helen question whether excitement or trepidation reigned supreme. "It's a twist on Grandma's recipe," Helen replied, putting on a brave smile. "And I added some healthier notes. We can always tweak it together." Laura's brow furrowed, no doubt recalling dinner table debates from years past when they had disagreed about food preparations. But Helen sensed something different beneath her daughter's uncertainty and openness that suggested a willingness to engage with this culinary adventure, even if it was laced with discomfort. As they sat down around the table, Helen chose a moment to voice her vulnerability, risking honesty in the turbulent waters of their relationship. "You know, Laura, I got scared when I thought about changing Grandma's recipes. I questioned if I was doing it justice, if I was letting our memories fade." Laura's fork paused midair. "You mean you care about those memories too?" "Of course I do. It's just," Helen hesitated, I want to be able to create new ones without losing what we have. Laura's eyes softened, unearthing a moment of connection. It feels a little like we're trying to erase them, doesn't it? No. I see it as honoring them by allowing us to grow, Helen replied, her heart racing as she sensed the risk they were taking. Could their discussion lead to a better understanding of their shared history? Okay, I get that. I guess, Laura reflected, her walls wavering. Maybe we can find a way to preserve our favorites while making them more us. Helen nodded, encouraged by this potential pivot in their dialogue. With each bite, the conversation shifted from the food to the memories tied within it. They reminisced about family gatherings, laughter echoing amidst scents of spices and nostalgia. Helen felt something shift, a bridge forming from shared stories as they began to navigate this complex landscape together. Yet doubt lingered in the dim corners of her mind. Could she maintain this balance, safeguard their shared history while daring to modify it? Were her choices truly representative of their family legacy, or were they merely band-aids on old wounds? With every interaction, Helen attempted to align their new creations with their family's essence, but struggled with the weight of her responsibility. Embracing the past meant facing grief and hope in its rawest forms. It was one thing to incorporate lighter ingredients. It was another entirely to forge an unbreakable connection between the dishes and the emotions they evoked. As dinner trudged on, and the initial hesitations gradually thawed, Helen felt the air shift not just in their meal, but in their relationship. She saw glimpses of hope in Laura's smile as they playfully debated recipe changes and ingredients. Yet the shadows of their past still lingered just out of sight, ready to resurface when least expected. That possibility loomed over their conversation like a specter, a reminder that this journey was not devoid of risks. There they were, two souls navigating uncharted territories, evidence of progress surfacing amidst unrelenting fears. Time was crucial. Each moment in the kitchen bore the weight of what had been, as well as the promise of what could be. And just as Helen felt a flicker of triumph, Laura's eyes hardened again. What about pizza? Dad loved the takeout kind. At that moment, Helen knew they had merely scratched the surface of this exploration. The real essence of their culinary adventure remained buried within layers of nostalgia and emotion, just waiting to be uncovered. A new challenge beckoned. Would they dare to confront those memories again, transforming them into something they could both embrace? The prospect loomed ahead, filled with the uncertainty that came with excavation. The next day dawned bright and clear, yet within Helen, clouds churned with unresolved emotions. She had spent sleepless hours replaying the dinner conversation, analyzing Laura's every reaction, searching for the moment when the delight of shared memories dimmed in the shadow of loss. This culinary adventure was quickly morphing into an emotional excavation site, and Helen now faced a new question: how to encourage Laura's engagement with their family's past without succumbing to the pain it brought. Laura had always loved pizza, a beloved fixture in their weekends together when they de-extract themselves from the chaos of life and indulge in takeout while binge-watching movies. For years, it had provided sanctuary, a sacred ritual devoid of conflict. Yet, that idea now nagged at Helen's mind. Pizza, while comforting, represented the easier choice's comida simples that offered nostalgia but no room for evolution. As the day unfolded, she resolved to rework the concept. The notion of crafting a homemade pizza inspired by Grandma's family tradition emerged as a viable pathway. She envisioned a pizza bursting with vibrant vegetables and herb-infused dough, each bite a reminiscence of the past, while embracing the potential for the new. Gathering her supplies, Helen felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. Constraints could serve as catalysts for creativity. What if they approached pizza making as their new ritual? The kitchen could transform into an arena for their collaboration, when laughter could drown out hesitation. Laura, how about a pizza night? Helen proposed later that evening, her voice infused with urgency and enthusiasm. Let us create our own version of family recipe reimagined. Laura's eyes momentarily narrowed, the caution returning. Isn't that still taking the easy way out? It's just pizza after all. Helen steeled herself against the disappointment creeping back. But it's about how we make it, not just the food itself. We can incorporate ingredients that highlight our family's essence, while making it healthier and uniquely ours. Caught between fear of disapproval and the hope to inspire collaboration, Helen inhaled deeply, searching for the right words. What if we use your favorite flavors, those that remind you of us as a family? We could talk about the memories tied to each topping. There was a flicker of curiosity in Laura's expression. Like what? With every suggestion that followed caramelized onions that reminded Helen of her late mother cooking in the kitchen, cherry tomatoes from Laura's childhood gardening endeavors, a thread began to weave itself. They mapped out their pizza, plot lines of nostalgia entwining with aspirations for growth. Okay, Laura finally conceded, her voice softer. But only if we can add that spicy chorizo I had at that little cafe downtown. I still think about it. Yes, that's the spirit. With that affirmation, Helen felt a surge of optimism. The act of creating pizza could be more than just dinner. It could evolve into a celebration of rebirth, one where memories transformed instead of faded. The following evening, however, as they embarked on this venture, Helen felt the weight of the kitchen press upon her. Flour dust floated like specters. Her thoughts raced between the joy of the task at hand and an undercurrent of dread. Was she equipped for this shift? Would Laura truly appreciate the undertaking, or would they merely tread familiar territory without making strides toward understanding? As they kneaded the dough together, Helen's heart burrowed deeper into uncertainty. Would the act of creating something new from the past energize their connection, or would it once again reveal the fractures they had yet to confront? The atmosphere thickened as each ingredient joined the mix, the air now heady with anticipation and the echo of laughter from the past. Yet as they prepared to bake, a fidgety tension simmered, silently reminding Helen that they still had not addressed more significant issues. A critical thought bubbled to the surface. How far could they transform their legacy? As the oven hummed to life, so too did the weight of realization. They were not just cooking. They were daring to blend broken pieces into newfound artistry. In that moment, Helen understood. The kitchen wasn't merely a battleground of memories, but a sacred space for crafting change and confronting her own hesitations. What secrets would emerge from this fusion of new and old, and could they truly learn from their entwined past? As the timer ticked away, Helen felt a crack forming in her foundation of apprehension. The adventure had only just begun, and daunting uncertainties loomed on the horizon, waiting for their courageous plunge into the deep. The aroma of baking dough enveloped the kitchen, transforming it into a warm embrace that softened Helen's apprehension. Each second ticked by like a drumbeat, building a rhythm of hope and uncertainty. As Laura rolled the dough with an intensity that mirrored Helen's inner struggle, Helen couldn't shake off the gnawing worry that swirled beneath the surface. They were crafting a bond, yes, yet how much deeper were they willing to delve into the emotional terrain that now simmered between them? Wait, should we set a timer? Laura asked, her brow furrowing slightly as she remembered their earlier mishap with the sourdough bread. Her voice was cautious, a reminder of the pitfalls that seemed inevitable whenever expectations formed like thick clouds overhead. Helen chuckled softly. How about we follow our instincts instead? It creates a little spontaneity. The laughter helped ease the pressure like steam escaping a pot, but her mind raced still, entwining the moment together with remnants of past failures. Was it truly their cooking that fueled the intimacy, or was there something more profound that they were daring to confront? They began adding toppings, vibrant colors cascading across the dough like an artist's palette. With each sprinkle of arugula and slice of sun-dried tomatoes, memories blossomed in Helen's mind. They were not simply preparing dinner. They were revitalizing history, inhaling its complexity and bittersweetness. What do you think your friends will say about our pizza? Laura asked, her tone playfully challenging. Helen leaned against the counter, crossing her arms and gazing at Laura. I think they'd be surprised that we didn't order takeout again. She felt a twinge of pride as she stated the obvious. This was progress, a recognition of their ability to create together rather than opt for the familiar, comforting routine. But buried within that pride was a darker layer of fear. What if this endeavor was a mere distraction? What if in making this pizza, they were overlooking the necessity to address deeper concerns? A turmoil brewed inside her, where joy and anxiety collided. Do you ever miss it? Helen asked suddenly, her voice lower, not wanting to disturb the delicate balance they had struck in their interactions. "Miss what?" Laura replied, momentarily taken aback as she focused on arranging the toppings. Her eyes flickered with an understanding beneath the levity, revealing a vulnerability Helen had long hoped to reach. "You know, the way things used to be. When everything felt easier, more straightforward." Laura paused, her fingers resting over the ingredients, processing Helen's words. The silence that followed stretched like a taut wire, heavy with meaning and the unspoken worries of both women. "Sometimes," Laura replied, her voice raw but sincere. "But I also think we've got to move forward. I mean, we can't just dwell on what has gone." The response hit Helen like a gust of wind, bringing clarity to her swirling emotions. She felt exposed but also invigorated. They weren't merely replaying dinner memories. They were testing the waters of renewal, daring to untangle the ties that bound them to the past. Every word exchanged infused resilience into their bond, an affirmation that they could adapt, grow, and evolve. As they slid the pizza into the oven, a wave of anticipation washed over Helen. This was transformation not just of ingredients, but of a relationship sewn together by struggles, laughter, and new discoveries. Yet the lurking shadow remained. There would still be the moment of truth what awaited them when the pizza emerged, and how would they face the conversation that would inevitably follow? In that pulsating moment, she sensed an impending decision, another step toward vulnerability. Would they embark on a deeper excavation, bravely shedding layers of grief and perception, or would they retreat back to safe, unchallenging shores? The oven timer chimed, cutting through the air. Helen felt her heart race. This was it, the culmination of their experiment, the test of courage and connection. As she opened the oven door, she could feel the heat engulfing her, as if it were beckoning her to pull back and reconsider. But she had already stepped forward too far to turn back now. The pizza emerged a tapestry of flavor and memory, but it was the conversation that threatened to unfurl next that held her captive. Was she ready to confront not just the intricacies of pizza making, but the complexities of their relationship? The answer loomed above her, unresolved yet tantalizing. With a deep breath, she faced Laura. The time had come to face the taste of nostalgia and the challenge of their shared future. Would they seize the moment or let it slip through their fingers? Helen steadied her heart. Whatever lay ahead, she was prepared to transform. The moment the aroma of the baked pizza swept through the kitchen, it felt like a call to arms. Its crispiness represented not just culinary success, but a deeper reckoning. Helen's mind raced as her fingers hovered over the edge of the pizza, dread mingling with excitement. Could this simple meal ignite discussions about the facets of their lives that they had left untouched? The dilemma loomed in front of her, heavier than the plate she held. "Wow, it looks amazing!" Laura exclaimed, her voice bright as she leaned closer, examining the creation. Yet, Helen couldn't drown in her friend's enthusiasm. Her heart was ensnared by an underlying tension, a blend of apprehension and courage. "Thanks," Helen replied, her voice softening, as if she were still weighing her words. Each slice cut from the circular pie felt like separating pieces of their past joys and jarring disagreements, intertwined within the crust. Would sharing this meal invite celebration or stir up the darker shadows hanging over them? As they settled at the table, Helen scrutinized Laura's expression. There was something palpable in the air, an energy crackling like static electricity. The closeness kindled a flicker of hope, yet the caution Helen felt was a reminder of everything unspoken. Laura took a bite, her eyes lighting up with delight. "Honestly, I think we should quit our jobs and open a pizzeria. We'd nail it." Her laughter danced around the room, but Helen's smile faltered as the weight of serious conversations loomed. "Maybe we could, but would we really enjoy it?" Helen ventured, stirring the pot of contemplation. She felt that familiar churn in her stomach, the fear of divergence trapped beneath layers of casual banter. What began as a light-hearted comment morphed into a knife of reality. Laura had thrown out an idea, but was it merely a coping mechanism? "What do you mean?" Laura asked, her brow furrowing as she chewed thoughtfully, the gleeful veneer slipping just a bit. Helen hesitated. "I mean, running a business together sounds challenging. What if it exposes more cracks than it fills?" The silence stretched between them, thick and burdensome. Helen felt their connection fragile in that moment, the pulse of their friendship hanging delicately, as if it were the pizza itself balanced on the edge of a plate. Laura's gaze penetrated like a spotlight. Are you really asking if we're strong enough, or are you worried about the past crushing us again? The question landed like a pebble in a pond, ripples extending throughout Helen's thoughts. This was the confrontation she had subconsciously steered clear of. The yearning for a deeper understanding clashed with a fear of vulnerability. No, it's not quite that. Helen fumbled for the right words. But we've both been through a lot, and I just wonder if we even know how to navigate something new without reverting to old habits. Laura leaned back, contemplating, and her demeanor shifted. I get that, but dwelling on old fears will only paralyze us. We need to choose growth over stagnation. With Laura's words, Helen felt her own resolve coalesce. What if deep-seated worries were not chains binding them, but rather puzzle pieces begging for alignment? Every shared experience, the laughter, the tears, the pizza-making had prepared them for transformation. As they finished their meal, the last slices eroticized by meaning, a new question began to thread its way through Helen's mind. Was she brave enough to embark on this challenging journey alongside Laura? Could they truly redefine their future through the crucible of their past mistakes? Each piece consumed felt like adding another layer to their rapport, yet beneath all the warm exchanges lay the gnawing uncertainty of what awaited them outside their culinary sanctuary. Helen's heart thrummed in anticipation, though questioning her readiness to explore the unknown. Determined, Helen decided to dismantle her fear. What if we list out what we fear about moving forward instead of brushing it aside? Laura's interest peaked, valuable insights simmering behind. Her thoughtful expression. You think that might help? It's worth a shot, Helen replied, her pulse racing, finding a flicker of excitement amidst the uncertainty. But was she ready for the potential fallout? That was the unspoken question lingering at the edges of their discussion, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And as she carefully plotted the necessary steps, Helen couldn't shake the feeling that the next challenge was breathing heavily down her neck, urging her onward. Would she be able to confront the roots of their fears together, or would the ease of the past ensnare them once more? The following week unfolded like a canvas of possibilities, bright and vibrant, yet haunted by the shadows of uncertainty. Helen stood in her kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the vibrant array of fresh vegetables waiting to be transformed into their next meal. This was a new rhythm of life she was learning, a conscious effort to create healthy dishes while connecting with Laura and the rest of her family on a profound emotional level. The day they had chosen to map out their fears hung over her like a dense fog. That conversation had felt liberating but also daunting. Would they be able to dig deep enough to unearth the hidden anxieties that had tethered them to their pasts? All right, let us do this. Helen spoke to herself, gathering not just ingredients, but also courage. She decided to make a hearty vegetable stir-fry, incorporating the lessons she had learned about balancing flavors with nutritional value. As the vegetables sizzled in the pan, she reflected on how the past few dinners had marked a significant shift, rebuilding their connection through food while confronting unspoken emotions. The conversation from last week echoed in her mind. For the first time, she felt the urge to write down their fears. Writing had always been an outlet for her, a way to clarify her thoughts. In that quiet space, she inscribed Laura's fear of change and her own fear of losing traditional ties entwined with fond memories. As Laura entered the kitchen, the smell of the stir-fry greeted her. It smells amazing. What's on the menu today? She asked, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. Vegetable stir-fry. I thought we could keep experimenting. Helen smiled, feeling the warmth in Laura's voice soothe her nerves. Are you ready for our discussion today? Yeah, I've been thinking about it, Laura admitted, her expression shifting from excitement to contemplation. I know it's important for us to confront the past, but honestly, it makes me anxious. Nodding, Helen lifted a wooden spoon and pointed it like a gavel. Me too. But I think if we work through this together, we can create something beautiful out of it. As they cooked and the dinner came together, their banter flowed naturally, punctuating their experience with laughter. The stir-fry sizzled in the pan, mirroring the rising tension in the air. Once they settled at the dining table, Helen felt the significant weight of the moment descend upon them. Yet this time, an undercurrent of hope filled the space. With a deep breath, she set the tone. I think we should start by sharing one fear each and how it affects us. I'll go first. I'm scared that changing our traditions will disconnect us from our family identity, Helen revealed. I think about every cherished dish and the memories surrounding them. I worry that if we stray too far, we might lose what we hold dear. Laura leaned forward, her eyes wide and attentive. That's real. It scares me too, to think we're forgetting the love those meals represented. But I also fear that if we don't change, we'll be stuck in unhealthy patterns, and that might fracture us even deeper. Helen could sense the vulnerability in Laura's voice, a raw honesty that bloomed like a flower breaking through pavement. What if we look at this as an evolution rather than a departure? She suggested. We can carry forward the essence of our traditions while embracing new elements. Laura nodded, her expression softening. Like honoring Grandma's recipes, but adapting them to fit our current lives. That feels possible. With shared resolve, they wrote down their thoughts, fears, and potential paths of collaboration on colorful sticky notes, which they then pasted on the fridge. Each note became a testament to their commitment, a roadmap infused with care and intention, a foundation on which they could build their future. As they finished dinner, laughter filled the air once again, and warmth settled over them like a comforting blanket. This wasn't merely about the meal, but about redefining a legacy through authenticity and understanding. That evening, Helen realized they had crossed a threshold. She observed Laura with admiration, seeing not just a daughter, but a partner on a joint journey towards a healthier and more fulfilling lifestyle. They had anchored their shared fears in openness, and with each step, the path ahead reflected both resilience and love. The next day, as Helen walked through her garden, she felt a surge of confidence, an acknowledgement that she had successfully navigated a significant transformation. She was shaping not just her health, but her family's future in ways she hadn't imagined possible. In the weeks that followed, the bond with Laura deepened even more. Meals became collaborative projects, each cooking session infused with laughter and reflection. They began to invite the rest of the family into their culinary journey. Joshua and Aileen joined in, and together they created a new family tradition, one that embraced both the old recipes and new adaptations. Helen achieved not just a change in her eating habits, but a profound re-establishment of connection. Instead of merely being a caretaker of traditions, she had become a pioneer of change, creating a shifting legacy that incorporated family history while nurturing progress. At the next family gathering, Helen set the table with pride, adorned with not just dishes but memories and aspirations. The culinary creations sparkled not just with new flavors, but also with the warmth of shared determination. As they gathered around the table, Helen felt a solid confidence fill her heart. They no longer clung to nostalgia. Instead, they celebrated the evolution of their family identity through each dish, a tangible product of their conversations, efforts, and unbreakable bonds. She realized she had achieved something truly remarkable, a legacy built not on fear and limitation, but on openness and shared love. This was her fulfillment. As she observed her family nodding in agreement over the shared dishes, she understood that personal transformation was synonymous with familial unity. Now was the time. Time to embrace this new chapter, to ensure that love and connection remained at the forefront of each meal, and to continue nurturing relationships through every adventure they would undertake together. If you are inspired by this journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for heartwarming stories about personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others find this tale of transformation. Comment your reactions and thoughts about Helen's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are ready to embrace change and grow. Let's spread this message of love and change far and wide.